Hey guys, so today in this video we'll be going through the client tracking method of unique client identifier and how it works, and kind of like when you would use it, and the differences between tracking by unique client identifier and tracking by IP. I hope you enjoy it. So here we are in the security in an SD-WAN addressing the VLANs, and you'd have the client tracking options, and you'd have this unique client identifier client tracking option. So there's two types of tracking options you would use if you have a layer 3 device downstream. So you'd have IP address and you'd have a unique client identifier. The difference between the two and when you would use one as opposed to the other is unique client identifier, as Meraki is recommending on my network, it knows that I have a layer 3 switch in the same network as my MX. So it tells me that this is the option to use. If I moved my layer 3 switch into a separate network, then track by IP address would show. So that's one of the main requirements that you would have for unique client identifier, is that the layer 3 Meraki switch needs to be in the same network as your security appliance. Your security appliance also needs to be on a firmware version 9 plus. The MS also needs to be 10 plus as well. I think if you, let's say in certain scenarios where you wanted to change, let's say you were using tracking by IP and you needed to change to UCI. So if you're currently tracking by IP, you would need to temporarily change and track by MAC in order to combine your network. And once the network is combined, you should see the option for unique client identifier. But just know that changing the tracking method will reset your client usage statistics. And also, if you want to go from unique client identifier to the others, let's say you want to go to MAC address or track to IP, your client usage data would take about 30 days. Whereas if you're going vice versa, so let's say if you're going from IP to UCI, it would take about 24 hours. So it's a much quicker transition when you're going from IP and MAC to the unique client identifier option. In certain scenarios when you would not use this is if you had, let's say you had your MX and then you had your layer 3 switch and then you had your ISP. Meraki, it doesn't recommend you to use the unique client identifier option here. What Meraki actually recommends is to put your layer 3 switch in a separate dashboard network when you have an MX and you have a layer 3 switch and then you have your ISP. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and try to understand. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention as well, you need to have a layer 3 switch in your network. So here I have a MS210, and if I don't have one of these switches in my network, track by IP or unique client identifier, you can't really get those options. MAC address will be the only option. So let's go ahead and try to understand how this works, unique client identifier. So here I have a basic topology, and you have your MX, you have your layer 3 MS, and you have PC1. And these two devices, so sorry, I'm going to clean that up. Let that go. So you have the MX and the layer 3 MS. So the layer 3 Meraki switch, they're going to be in the same dashboard network. So what we're going to do is we're going to send a packet from PC1 over to the MX and see how it travels. So here we have a packet, but let's go ahead and try and explain, what's going on first. So you'll have IP address 192.168.0.5, the MAC address, and you have the UCI. So the UCI is built up of a mixture of between a client's MAC address and the IP address. So here I've done an example. I'm not saying this is exactly how Meraki do it, but you'll have the MAC address of PC1, and then you'll have kind of like the IP address, so 192.168.5, which is kind of like the IP address shortened. I'm just going to move my head over to here so we can explain what's happening. So here we have a client, so a packet. So PC1, you have the source IP address, which is PC1's IP address, the destination, which is Cloudflare's DNS IP service, and the source MAC, PC1's destination MAC, which is the layer 3 switch, because the default gateway of PC1 is the layer 3 switch. And then you'll have, of course, the UCI. So what we'll do is we'll send this packet over to the layer 3 switch, and the layer 3 switch now receives it, and it looks, okay, this switch needs routing. So what it's going to do is it's going to send the packet over to the MX, but before it does that, it's going to change the MAC address from the PC1's MAC address it was previously the source to now being the source being it's the layer 3 switches, and the destination is the destination of the MX, the destination MAC address of the MX. So that's just general of how layer 3 switching works. If you need more information on how that works, I do have another video. But let's go ahead and send that packet over. So what will happen is the MS will send the packet over to the MX, and notice that one thing, like the UCI has not changed at all. The MAC address has changed from PC1 over to the layer 3 switch, but the UCI has remained the same. So now what will happen is the MX will look at two entries, which is the client, which is PC1, and the UCI. And once it sees that, then it will add that as a client list entry. So you'll have PC1, you'll have 192.168.0.5 is the IP address, but it's really going to be tracking based on the UCI. So the UCI is what it's going to use in order to get statistics of what type of traffic that PC1 is using. It's not going to use the IP. It's going to use this option here. So this is a very handy option. Of course, it's better tracking method if you have a layer 3 switch and an MX in a combined network together. I hope this has been informative for you. Thank you for watching.